Mr. Howlin, and also Minister move amendment number 1.
Yeah, I propose to share my time with Deputy Emmett Stagg and Deputy Andrew Doyle. And I move the government amendment to the motion tonight. I'm sorry I'm late. I was at an EMC. I would not have missed the colourful contributions of Deputy McGrath in normal circumstances. I see he's moving now into the sphere of the Sinn Féin deputies here to tell the Troika to take a hike and take their money with them. And that's it's lovely to have that view. Deputy, let me speak. Let me speak, Deputy. Let me speak, Deputy. Let me speak. Let me speak through the chair. I know you supported Bertie and you supported all his works and pomps and you thought he was a great fellow and you voted to rescue the banks and you bankrupted the country. You were part of that cabal. Now, mind you, in fairness, you did abandon ship when you saw the leak coming. But let me deal with the specific issue, because I think it's a very important and very significant issue that's before the House tonight. I'd like, in the first instance, we might listen. In the first instance, to outline the background to the proposed sale. The sale, and you might listen to this through the chair, the harvesting rights, in order to put that into context. The background is essentially the government was faced with unprecedented budgetary challenges, the result of which is that the state is currently dependent on financial assistance provided, as everybody in the House knows, through the EU-IMF funding programme. There's still a significant gap between exchequer revenues and what we spend every day. This is unsustainable, has to be addressed, and every day we're making decisions, difficult, hard, uncomfortable decisions, to address that and put that right, fix the broken economy that this government inherited 2 years ago. As I've said, in these circumstances, it would be negligent for the government not to at least carefully examine all reasonable means of raising revenue and to reduce expenditure, including the release of some of the value across a wide range of our state assets. This particular option was carefully examined and announced on the statement that I issued in February of 2012. The government decided that consideration would be given to the sale of some of the assets of Cuilta, excluding the land. The land will obviously always remain in state ownership. This was reflecting the concerns expressed at the time about the sale of such a large area of state lands. At all stages in the process, issues of major importance have been identified and efforts made to address any impediments or any legitimate concerns that were given by members of the House or by the general public. In particular, the government was conscious of the level of concern expressed by about the ownership of the land. It was agreed at that initial stage that Cuilta would be included in the asset disposal programme, and further consideration was deemed necessary to identify the appropriate asset within the entity that is Cuilta, which could be sold. The outcome of that consideration was that a feasible option to realise value from Cuilta would be for the sale of the harvesting rights of the forests. Now, it's a commercial forestry company. It grows trees to sell them. It's like a farmer selling his corn. Naturally, that's what the trees are for. And the issue then is whether we would sell it. Well, the trees, you can't sell the trees annually because they're not miracle grow. They don't pop up overnight. But the issue then is whether we should sell them in an incremental way, or whether we should sell them in advance to get the money that the country really desperately needs right now. And they're the considerations we were doing, quite proper and quite appropriate. And the appropriate conditions attaching, including in relation to the continued public amenity, hugely important to every deputy in the House, access guaranteed to the forests, won't be keeping out the birds, honestly. Replanting obligations, commitments to minimum and maximum annual harvesting volumes, and to ensuring continuity of supply to the timber processing sectors. These are all legitimate and real concerns that had to be addressed individually. The government accordingly agreed, in principle in June of last year, to the sale of the harvesting rights to Cuilta forests as the best means of extracting value from Cuilta in the short to medium term. The government has since continued that process, and we've advanced with very great caution in relation to this option. We've undertaken further detailed analysis carried out by the new ERA entity that we've created, which has proven to be a very valuable new oversight body, in conjunction with Cuilta itself, the Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine, and my own department, to identify the forestry assets involved, determine their value, and consider all the range of issues associated with the sale of the harvesting rights that I've already outlined. In addition, a number of detailed financial, technical and other specialist reports have been prepared for Cuilta by external specialist consultancy body in full consultation with the board of Cuilta and its executive management. Cuilta has been integral to this process through the provision of data and relevant background information. And as the House is aware, Cuilta is a commercial company trading in a competitive environment, and so matters relating to the performance of its various businesses and its portfolio are commercially sensitive, and it's therefore not appropriate to comment publicly on the analysis taken to date. The Government is fully conscious of the concerns that have been raised not only by deputies opposite, and I acknowledge them, they're real, but by the general public, by recreational groups, the timber processing sector, the trade unions, and indeed, as I say, members of the House. New ERA, the Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine, and my own department are fully aware of the findings of the Peter Bacon and Associates report commissioned by Impact, contained in the assessment of the consequences of the proposed sale of Cuilta's timber harvesting rights, published on the 10th of January of this year. However, the authors of the Impact Commission report have not had the opportunity to consider the very detailed information available now to the state on foot of our due diligence. And their analysis of the potential costs and proceeds from our harvesting rights transaction appear to be based on historical, publicly available information, as well as a number of assumptions in relation to transactional structure and sale conditions, and are not necessarily in line with the proposals the government is currently developing. This process is a complex one, and I want Lascian Corla to assure the House that the government will continue to proceed with caution in relation to this matter. I've already assured the House in relation to the sale of other state assets that the government will ensure that all of the implications of each asset disposal will be very carefully considered, with a view to mitigating any potential negative impacts associated with any disposal. In the context of Cuilta, this will include the need to ensure the stability of the entire timber industry, which is really important for us, and the jobs associated with it, maximising recreational and biodiversity value of Ireland's forests. I think there's greater potential there than is actually currently being exploited, and ensuring the continuity of access to the forests as a public amenity. As with all state asset sales, this sale will only proceed if it makes economic and strategic sense for the Irish people. And I give the House that commitment tonight. I'd also like to remind the House of the use to which the proceeds of which asset sales may be put, as provided for under the revised programme that this government has agreed now. As agreed with the Troika, half of the proceeds will be available to the government to fund employment-enhancing projects of a commercial nature, and the other half, while destined eventually to pay down debt, also being available in the first instance to constitute a fund to underpin additional lending into Ireland. This is to fund our infrastructure, our stimulus package as a backstop, and it's a creative way of using money and create jobs. I have concentrated thus far on the background to and the status of the State Asset Disposal Programme as it relates to Cuilta. However, I am, as is the government, also cognizant of the importance of the forestry sector to the economy, to society and to the environment. The motion by the technical group highlights some aspects of this contribution, including the numbers employed in the sector, the value of exports by the sector and the job creation potential. I also know that Irish sawmillers have worked hard in recent years to develop new products and markets, and it's encouraging that their efforts, along with those of all stakeholders in the sector, have resulted in a vibrant, export-oriented forest-producing sector. The state has also been involved in this process, as it has made the state itself a significant investment in the development of forestry over the last number of decades, primarily through the provision of funding for the afforestation grant and premium schemes and other support schemes which are operated by the Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine. This department has maintained the level of funding for the development of forestry in recent years, despite all the economic pressures, which shows a strong ongoing commitment to forestry in Ireland. The outcome of the investment in forestry to date has been an increased participation of private landowners in forestry. I understand that there is a significant amount of privately owned forestry now approaching first thinnings, and in the years ahead, more privately owned timbers will become available to the market. Thus, the mobilisation of privately owned timber in itself creates opportunity, which the industry, in conjunction with Taoiseach, are seeking to maximise. While Cuilta is currently the main supplier of timber to the timber processing sector, it should not be overlooked that the privately owned timber resource will be becoming available over the next number of years. I appreciate that this will be a gradual development, but in time, it too should contribute to competitiveness in the timber supply sector. My colleague, Minister Coveney, in his reply to parliamentary questions last December, stated clearly that the government will not do anything that will undermine or significantly damage the number of sawmills, damage the timber or sawmill sector in Ireland. This remains the position. Another important consideration, also mentioned in the Deputy's motion, is the level of forestry cover in this country. The state, through its funding of the afforestation programme, has facilitated a sizable increase over the last number of years. In this regard, it should be noted that it is a demand-led sector, so the planting level each year is determined primarily by landowners and their selection of forestry as an enterprise that they want to participate in. While afforestation is promoted on an ongoing basis, it is also essential to maintain the existing level of forestry. In order to preserve the forest estate and to protect the considerable state investment in forestry to date, it is the policy of the Department of Agriculture, Food and the Marine that forestry plantations must be replanted after clear fell has taken place. On this basis, only general felling licences are issued for normal commercial forestry operations. And under the Forestry Act of 1946, such licences carry a compulsory replanting condition. This resulted in an increase in forest cover from a disastrously low level to 11% at present. This is still low by European standards, I acknowledge that, but reflects a greatly increased level of forestry cover over the last 20 years. The maintenance and increase of forestry cover in Ireland is also essential for climate change mitigation purposes. Forests play a significant role in mitigating climate change by removing carbon dioxide from the atmosphere and converting it to carbon, which is then stored in the wood and vegetation of trees. In 2008, 2009 and 2010, the net contribution of Ireland's Kyoto-eligible forests amounted to about 8.6 million tonnes of CO2 over the 3 years. Assuming a carbon cost of €14 per tonne, this represented a significant saving to the Exchequer in carbon credit purchases, which we avoided having to make. Forests also play a role in reducing Ireland's carbon emissions from the combustion of fossil fuels. The increased use of indigenous wood also offers significant opportunities to reduce Ireland's dependence on imported fossil fuels and contributes to national fuel security. I am mentioning these aspects to illustrate that the government is very much aware of the economic contribution which forestry makes both directly and indirectly to our community. The implications of any proposed transaction, which immediate or in the long term, are being thoroughly investigated, thoroughly considered in that overall context. The government is also highly aware of the concerns expressed about the possible implications for recreational access. Given the current emphasis on pursuing a healthy lifestyle and the importance of exercise, it is encouraging to note that significant numbers of our population avail of these facilities and are prepared to bring their concerns to our attention. I want to reiterate, Alaska and Corla, that it is the harvesting rights alone which are being considered for sale, and that work has been undertaken to identify potential forests for such a transaction. The level of recreational use is one consideration that must be integral to the selection process. It is the government's firm intention that appropriate provision would be included in any sale of Coilte's harvesting rights to allow for the maintenance of the company's current open forestry policy. I underscore that. That will be maintained. In conclusion, Alaska and Corla, I welcome this debate. It gives the government an opportunity to outline the basis for the decision to consider selling the harvesting rights of Coilte, to give an update on the status of that consideration to the House, and to give reassurance to members of the House and to the general public that the government is fully aware of the concerns and of all the issues surrounding such a proposed transaction. I reiterate the government will proceed with great caution in relation to this matter, and that any final decision will take full account of all the legitimate concerns expressed by deputies opposite.